All right, guys, welcome back to another edition of Fintech Fridays. I'm Brian View, your host. We're joined by a real special guest. I'll introduce Phil in a moment here, but before we get rolling, I just noticed that we're like closing in, or we just went past our 40th episode of this little podcast that started out as a challenge that I reacted to that has now become kind of a fun thing that I get to do every week. And what we've been doing is a lot of times me having conversations with people I've either just met or I'm just meeting, and in trying to share those conversations to help others kind of meet real interesting, connected people in our industry. And there is no one that's more excited about introducing to the industry that may not know him already than Phil Foss, who's the founder and CEO of Optus Group Holdings. Phil, welcome to FinTech Fridays.
Thank you, Brian. I'm pleased to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I'm a fan of FinTech Friday. I watch when I can between other meetings. So thank you very much. Love to spend some time with you today.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. And the title FinTech Fridays, doesn't always focus exclusively on tech, but I do think our conversation today will be the intersection of technology, marketing, data, and real life, and how you package the intersection of all this together with something that I've never seen in my experience in mortgage banking, and that's almost 3 decades long. And so I'm super excited to kind of dive right in. Not even sure where to start. Every time we talk off the camera, I leave the conversation just more in awe of the power of what you're sitting on at Optus. So maybe just start for our audience. Introduce yourself, kind of your background, because you have your own mortgage banking background. And then how you kind of got to where you got today. And as quickly as we can, let's get into this powder keg that you're sitting on top of.
Yeah, thank you very much. So somehow, I guess we've all passed through this experience of mortgage banking somewhere along the way, right? Some of us have managed to get away from it enough, but still be attached that it feels good. And the rest of us are still fully attached. So, or the rest of the audience is fully attached. So I come from a very high senior level background in mortgage banking with Washington Mutual many years ago. Very, very in tune with retail production. I directed loan officers downstream from me in the Washington Mutual world. So I come out of that space. I understand fully what that looked like 25 years ago, and then what it looks like today, which is strangely similar. Yeah. And with the addition to some very, very powerful technology, which is, if we had this type of stuff available to us back in the day, then maybe some of those companies would still be standing. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But so my background is in mortgage banking. I'm the founder of Optus Group Holdings. We are a management consulting firm. We work inside and outside of the financial sector. I won't bore the listeners with what we do outside of financial, but we are very, very well tied into both mortgage and real estate based on some intellectual property we own and some governances over some very, very important data that we transition into physical production for the mortgage banking space.
Love it. And I think you and I connected on a bunch of different levels, but we experienced similar ends to parts of our career in 2008-ish. So,
mine was in 1999, and I looked back for a little while, but not for very long. So
good for you, yeah. What's interesting is, you and I had this conversation the other day. What's fascinating to me, and I look at the crash of 07, 08-ish, and how many people actually have come out of that in a good spot. And I think there was a lot of lessons learned, and there's sometimes I look at some of the stuff that happens in our industry today, and I'm like, oh gosh, we're not doing this again, are we? But it feels different. It feels like there truly were lessons learned, and I'd love to kind of focus on Optus and how that kind of grew out of your experience at Washington Mutual.
So great. So as many of us, you included, as we led retail channels, our primary focus, of course, was to engage and grow the realtor-builder relationship space, right, between mortgage and real estate, or mortgage and builders. So while that's a very, very important category in mortgage and real estate, and still is, one of the things that that I discovered toward the end of my tenure with WAMU was, and then wound up creating this company around this particular topic, was an alternate business channel that falls from the family law sector. When someone in this country is going through a family law matter, a divorce, and they own real property, a judge eventually will issue a court order, mandating either a refinance or a listing. And so I was in graduate school at the end of my tenure with WAMU. I wound up writing and publishing around that topic. And today, one of the things that we do here at Optus Group Holdings is deliver that information in a real sense, not in a lead gen sense. We deliver physical borrowers or sellers into both the real estate space and mortgage banking space. We do that at a national level, and I think we have to understand how deep that pool is in this country. In a very negative way, if you will, the occurrence of divorce in this country is exceedingly high, unfortunately. I myself have been through that, which is part of where the model came from. But we aggregate data from all 3,143 U.S. counties that produces tomorrow's borrower in a cash-out refinance sense, and or a forced listing capacity. So I think that type of production set, married against traditional realtor-builder based business, can change the face of any company.
Yeah. The very first time we talked on this topic, I admittedly left the call thinking, this is lead gen. There's nothing here. Everyone's got access to this, right? And as you and I kind of dug in deeper, I think I'm as early as 2 minutes into the second time we talked, a light bulb went off in my head, and I'm like, no, this isn't like everything else. And you kind of talked to me about this fact that the industry, our industry, the mortgage industry, the real estate industry, sits on top of this data today, and we walk all over it, right?
Right.
And some people are working with families that are going through divorce, and they're facilitating listings and refinances as such. But they're doing it they're receiving that. They have to be on the receiving end of it. And what you have with your data, but more importantly with the program you're putting around the data, is a very strategic, actionable way to get in front of being on the receiving end of it. Maybe we just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so very well said. Today's mortgage banker or real estate agent is really simply on the receiving end. Someone going through a family law matter that does need the services and solutions of mortgage or real estate will reach out to those particular entities to help solve the problem. So we reverse engineered the path by amassing the data and amassing the actual litigant and placing the litigant in front of the mortgage banker and or real estate agent, but not in a lead gen sense. So one of the things we talked about a long time ago was how different our data is than what the industry recognizes as lead gen. So because the data that we manage has a demand feature to it. A judge will order either a listing or a refinance, completely changes the calculus on the data that we own and distribute across the industry. Our partners are both from mortgage and from real estate, and I think for you and I anyway, back in the day and still today, pardon the pun, but the marriage between mortgage and real estate, loan officer and realtor, if when built correctly, the utilization of what we deliver changes their landscape completely. And what we've done as we've engaged FinLocker, which I can't even express. I've told you many times how pleased we are with our engagement with FinLocker. We've done something that's very similar to what you guys do when you engage any one given mortgage company. You have stood up an app for us that goes by the name of My Divorce Journey, and we stack that app right on top of 3.6 million records a year, so as to introduce the litigant to the journey whereby the loan officer and real estate agent are already paired. So we're doing some of the work on behalf of the lending community and real estate community for them because of the strength and the muscle behind the FinLocker app. We couldn't be more happy. I've shared that with you on many occasions.
Yeah. This is one of the rare occasions on my little podcast that we'll probably go more into FinLocker than I'm usually wanting to do in the setting. But set aside FinLocker, but it's the connection of the technology and not only the data, but the nature of the data in particular that I think is so compelling here. And when we started talking about this data that you own, and the more I thought about it, the journeys that we've built today to support mortgage and real estate, there's no difference. All we're really talking about is the introduction of this app, where it gets introduced, and you kind of hit on this. Traditionally or typically, our app is introduced by a lender, mortgage lender, an enterprise mortgage company that we've worked with to publish an app on their behalf. And a lot of times it's introduced via the loan officer of that lender, and that's how the consumer gets connected to the app. And what we've been able to do together, and again, it didn't really require a lot of programming on our part, which made my team happy. We've created a version of FinLocker that's not attached directly to a lender, enterprise lender. It's attached to Optus, and it's in support of families that are going through a life-changing event. Right? I grew up in one of those events, and so I don't like to use that divorce word itself because it is what it is. But it's a life-changing event, and I think what we saw together was a way to potentially improve some of the family situations and the processes they go through. And as important, though, is your process for vetting the participants in the ecosystem, right? You've been very thoughtful about who to bring in from a partnership perspective, but also which lenders, which originators, which realtors, brokers are part of this. And maybe we talk a little bit about kind of the level of vetting that you go through to ensure that when a litigant is being connected through this process, that all parties kind of have the same level of understanding of what's expected of them in this journey. Yeah,
great way to say it. And maybe one way to look at it from our side of the fence is we have reverse engineered the contact and conversational path. So because we have the access to the litigant, right, which is ultimately the end user of the combined app, My Divorce Journey, and their engagement with the real estate and mortgage banking community, because they're the end user. One of the things we've been able to do is stack the LO and the real estate agent on the front end of that relationship to begin to open the conversational journey. And to your point about how we vet or what companies we're interested in working with, or what loan officers or real estate agents might sit on our platform, we are very, very cautious about who our clients are and who the loan officers and real estate agents are, not because of any questions of LOs or real estate agents, not at all, but more an ability for that loan officer or real estate agent to adopt our methodologies and the need to be very sensitive with the litigant. This is the most disruptive time in their life. They will never experience anything like this, most likely ever again. And that because of that, that loan officer and that real estate agent need to address every litigant with the utmost level of empathy and understanding and slow and gentle process because of where they're at emotionally. And so the mortgage banking space and the real estate space, probably because of people like you and I, it was always a conversation about sell, 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 sell. And
right.
There's nothing wrong with that when it's pointed at the right audience. This is not the right audience for that conversational track. It needs to be unpacked on behalf of the loan officer and real estate agent, unpackaging at the litigant level. What is the task? What is the task with 123 Main Street? What do they want to try to accomplish? Is someone trying to remain in the marital home? Maybe they have minor children, and that's a very important thing, that they remain in the marital home. And because of that, does that make it a refinance conversation? Or have they made a decision to exit the property in the form of a listing? If they have, obviously that becomes a real estate conversation. But helping loan officers and real estate agents through a training platform that we deliver when you rest on this platform is critical both to us, and it's critical to our client, the mortgage banker or real estate agent. And ultimately, so as to deliver the right solutions at the right pace, at the right time, to satisfy the desires of the litigant and remaining sensitive. And then if you stack on top of that the need for the court system to understand what's happening with real property along the way. The loan officer and real estate agent are, quite frankly, they're much more involved in that conversation that they probably recognize.
Right.
The court does put timelines to these actions, whether it's a refinance or a listing, and communicating properly with the court system, et cetera, is an integral part in those that we onboard. So we are cautious. We love our lender partners out there. We love our real estate partners out there. We certainly have space on the platform for more of them, and we like that. But we are cautious. We want them to understand that this is not a sales event. This is something very, very different. And quite frankly, if I were to take my mortgage banking background, and I wouldn't speak for you, but maybe you would lean into this as well, that at the end of the day, that's a preferred way to originate, right?
Yeah.
It's more empathetic. You're really solving a problem for someone that's backed into a corner, and they really don't have many options.
Right.
So yeah, we are very selective. We have great partners, and I think one of the things that helps add some fluidity to our record and the engagement cycle at the loan officer or real estate level is the app, so that they can the LO or the real estate agent can help Mr. and Mrs. Smith through that progression, and the app is speaking to those topics along the way, and eventually solving or solving part of answering some of the questions to whether someone can stay or if they have to list the property.
One of the many things that I've come to really enjoy in these conversations and really better understand how it relates to tech, FinLocker in this case, Fintech, is you didn't come to FinLocker looking for push button get mortgage. The ask was really, we're looking for some technology to partner with our clients who are loan officers and real estate agents. And so it's really this combination of high tech with normally I'll say high tech, high touch. What I'll say here, it's high tech with very, very high touch. And you provide part of that coaching to get to that very, very high touch, all anchored around empathy. And I think, you know, a lot of times on these podcasts, or depending on my guests, we'll be talking about disruption and, you know, is technology taking over the role of an agent and the role of a loan officer? I'm here to say that in this very real example, that's not the case at all. It's a case where technology is helping scale the ability for an individual, a person, a loan officer, a real estate agent, to provide exceptional service and solutions at some level of scale, right? And so I'd love your perspective on that, because I don't think where you sit, absent Optus's role in this program, but really looking at the industry as a whole, I don't think where you sit, you're looking at technology to significantly disrupt the loan officer real estate role going forward.
Yeah, no, I love that. Not only as a company are we not in the business of disrupting any kind of client's space. The use of fintech in the mortgage space, one, I know for people like me, boy, it would have changed my world, 25 years ago, and I think probably yours as well. But yes, to look at what tools can augment the conversation, what tools can augment a mortgage banker or real estate agent's engagement with a client, or in our case, a litigant. What are those tools, and how does the app, as an example, or fintech in general, how does that help advance the empathy involved? How does it slow down the pressure? How does, by using that technology, help not only the loan officer and the real estate agent, but most importantly, the litigant, so that they're not getting bombarded with loan officer A and loan officer B and real estate agent A and real estate agent B? If we can clear that deck and use fintech stacked on top of our record to help that journey, well, we've really solved for a significant problem, and it's not disruptive at all. In fact, it bolsters the type of production any partner of ours sees from the street, right? Because what the data that we hold, to your point, we use a little bit different terminology, and this existed when I was at WAMU. Everyone in the industry is standing right on top of this user, right? The family law litigant. And it's some people will say, well, you can just go get that information. It's public data. No, you can't. And what you can see from a public standpoint is so limited that it's not going to advance you into the conversation. And so it's not about disruption at all. It's about using financial technology supported by the skill sets of mortgage bankers and real estate agents, and then the litigant that we supply. When you pull those things together, you have solved for a significant problem, and the pool is very, very deep, unfortunately.
Yeah, let's spend a few minutes before we wrap up just talking about the data, the metrics around this pool of people. Because you've shared a couple different metrics with me around the size of the pool is one thing. I think everyone understands the divorce rate is what it is. It's high 40%, if not 50%, right? It's probably not reversing anytime soon. But more significant, I think, and more interesting to me was in that set of data, you've got this percentage of cases that involves real property versus not, and then you leverage or looking at the cases with real property. You have some interesting waterfall metrics on kind of the ultimate resolution of those cases. What's fascinating is the data is all there, so you already know what the conversion is generically, right? Meaning somebody's going to list, somebody's going to refinance. The data says what it says. This is what's happening out there today. And so maybe let's just talk a little bit about that, because I think it'll open some people's eyes to what this really looks like.
Yeah, great question. So there's multiple parts in that question, obviously, and I'll do my best to kind of start from 50,000 feet. So roughly 3.6 million family law filings last year in the United States. About 2.5 million of those held real property. So, and before I go any further, if I can touch on, well, what about the other 1 million?
Yeah.
What about the other 1 million families that went through a divorce but didn't own real property? They too are a wonderful conversation for a mortgage banker or a real estate agent. There's just no question about that. Just because they didn't own real property doesn't mean they're not an active or potentially an active conversation. They will likely, someone is moving, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean someone's moving into home ownership, but if I can roll back to the app for 1 second, as designed, it was designed to move that first-time home buyer, right?
Right.
And so that additional million records a year is a very interesting category. You and I have talked about that in detail.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so, but maybe more importantly, or in a different capacity, the 2.5 million, roughly 2.5 million families that go through divorce. If there are, and this is part of the data that that we can see that you couldn't capture from a public standpoint, and that is if the case holds minor children, and what is the action requested by a litigant when there are minor children. So when there are minor children held in the case, if you start with 2.5 million real property holdings, and there are minor children in the case, a little over 81% of the times, it's a very substantial percentage of those 2.5 million will want to attempt to refinance because they would prefer not to move the minor children out of the marital home. That's generally the first task. That doesn't speak to their qualification standard. Doesn't speak to whether or not they can qualify to deal with a cash out refinance. When you pull the data through to the actual fundable refinances, a little over 55% will fund as a cash out refinance. So that's a pretty stable refinance channel. It's interesting to me when I hear in all of the places I listen to, I'll just call it LinkedIn for a minute, and all of the conversation around the industry has shifted from refinance to purchase. That's true, but there's still a pretty big category, one that we happen to hold, that is still of refinance. But even when it is refinance, even when 55% of those are refinancing as a cash out, there's an exiting spouse that's leaving with equity that is most likely transitioning into a purchase event.
Right.
So if the loan officer and real estate agent are managing that case properly, not only could they realize a refinance opportunity, but the transition to the exiting spouse as a buyer.
Right.
And we do maintain all of the statistical data on how many of those convert to a new repurchase, if you will, post-listing. Or post-listing or post-refinance. So about 55% are fundable refinances. They will qualify for a cash-out refinance. And the equity positioning today doesn't hurt, right?
Right.
And then just about 45% will fall to a forced listing. And that's the combined total of families that will just simply elect to list the property, or those that have attempted to refinance but have been declined,
right,
for whatever reason. So, again, if you look at the data from 50,000 feet, we know what refinances. We actually know that by address, believe it or not, and what lists by address, and then what the transition to new property is by an exiting spouse. So no matter what happens against one of our records, it is supporting either the mortgage space or the real estate space, and there can be a multiple X factor there, right?
Right.
Securitize, if the lender and real estate agent are partnered properly with the joint mission of solving the problem for the litigant, and they refinance, the real estate agent has an opportunity to engage a buyer. And then, I don't know, maybe that loan officer should fund that purchase transaction.
Yeah.
Right? And so to your statement, there's a lot of waterfall in here inside the individual records that I was standing on top of at WAMU, and you were
Sure.
standing on top of at Flagstar.
Yeah.
And everyone is standing on top of it. I think when you take financial technology and our data sets, it changes the game completely. I think we've gone into a lot of detail about that.
Yeah, this I love it, and we could probably talk for hours on this topic. I think we've done that in a few different occasions already.
Yeah.
This happens to be one of our conversations we get to record.
Right.
What I was hoping to accomplish, we've accomplished. I wanted the audience to hear your story, to hear the story of Optus, and kind of understand from a strategy perspective what is out there in the market, and this is a viable solution. I think clearly where we sit today, Masters weekend, so it's early spring.
Right.
We're staring at a 30-year fixed rate and a high 4 handle. The rate and term refis, that were falling out of the trees they've stopped. Those have clearly stopped, and we've gotten back into kind of an old school, normal mortgage origination business where it's 70-ish% purchase, strategic refinances, which I would categorize this product in that case, is the norm. And we're back there. And sadly, a lot of originators in the business today haven't had to exist in this kind of a market. And we're going to see many of them go away. And that's part of the cycle as well. But I do think there's an opportunity for many of those that are newer to the business. That I love the way new generation loan officers think and operate, and I think with the right strategy and the right tools, they can continue to excel in any market. And this is what Optus has, and the program that you've put together, Phil. I think is what any lender should be looking at, but especially those that are kind of forward-leaning in our space. So I just want to thank you for coming on and sharing Optus with our audience. We'll when we post this, we'll obviously link to Phil and to Optus so people can learn more. Again, thank you so much for joining the show.
Thank you too, Brian. I very much appreciate it. Very much appreciate the relationship that we have with FinLocker, and these are ongoingly exciting times in the mortgage and real estate space. And so thank you for allowing me to tell our story very briefly. I appreciate that.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Have a great weekend.